You're listening to Metal Matters, a weekly Gimme Radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill. If you like metal, punk, hardcore, or anything extreme, you've come to the right place. So subscribe and never miss out. This episode started out conceptually as a classic records episode where Randy Larson and I were going to be talking about the Lurker of Chalice LP. But quickly, it turned into just a general appreciation for the work output of Jef Whitehead, also known as Wrest. There are many one-man black metal projects out there, but Leviathan, Lurker of Chalice, in our opinion, is the deepest, darkest, and most interesting. Whitehead is a man of few words, so there's not a whole lot of interviews out there with him. Noisey did a mini documentary on one-man black metal projects, and he's featured prominently, so we use that as some source material. If you like this episode, I recommend checking out this mini doc. If you like the show, please give us a star rating on iTunes, share it with your friends, repost it on your social media. We're looking to grow this thing, so don't keep it a secret if you enjoy the show. If you want to hit me up, you can reach me on Facebook as Michael Hill, on Instagram as Michael_DC_Hill. Those are pretty much the only two social media things I mess around with these days. There's Twitter, which I have an account, but I don't really tweet a whole lot. I never quite like that term, tweeting. You know, back in the 90s, when I was just starting to get into like the second wave of black metal, it was a few years later that as I discovered that there was a pretty vibrant scene in the United States. You know, I'm not going to lie and say that I knew about Vaughn back then, but I did find out about, Dan Lurker's band, Hemlock. But what was most interesting to me was there was a group of bands, Absu, Krieg, Knockmistium, and Leviathan. And now out of all those bands, Leviathan was the one that really got its hooks into me.
Yeah, man, same here.
You know, I think, musically there was just a lot of different things going on with that. And then I found out that the man behind it, Wrest, a.k.a. Jef Whitehead, tattooist extraordinaire, also had another project that existed between the years of 2001 and 2005 called Lurker of Chalice. And that it was, once again, a project that he single-handedly put together and, wrote, recorded, for the most part, recorded everything too. And I think that out of all those bands is the stuff. Let's also not forget Zaster, another one-man project that's right. Part of that original group of bands that sort of made their mark. But I feel like the Lurker of Chalice / Leviathan output to me is like kind of defines like U.S. black metal in my opinion.
I think it's the cream of the crop for U.S. black metal. Definitely my favorite. The Lurker of Chalice record in particular, as much as I love all the Leviathan stuff, the Lurker of Chalice record is probably one of my favorite black metal records of all time.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not just black metal. You can hear different strains of other types of music in there. And I think that originally the way it was presented to me, it was like black metal crossed with this sort of gothic influence. And for me, I found out about Leviathan through my good friend Dave Whitty, the famous drummer of Municipal Waste, Brain Tentacles, King Generator, the band that he and I do together, Burnt by the Sun, River Black, Discordance Axis, Black Army Jacket, like you name it. The list goes on and on of that guy's musical repertoire. But Dave actually was the one who turned me on to Leviathan, and he's like, "Oh, you like black metal? You should definitely check this out." So I remember driving around in his car one day. He was playing this CD for me, and originally I was like, "Yeah, this is pretty insane stuff." Then a couple years later, I moved in with a good friend of mine, Hunter, and he was the kind of guy who just a music like fiend. Like he had MP3 downloads of all the stuff from dudes that back in the early 2000s. Trading files with people, file sharing, like that whole thing was kind of his bag. And he laid the Lurker of Chalice record on me one night. And I'm like, oh, this sounds just like this band Leviathan, except it's like a little bit different. And it turned out that it was obviously the same guy, expressing himself under a different name. But it wasn't until I actually delved into the demos of Lurker of Chalice that I was able to see what they meant about the gothic sort of influence in the band. And it wasn't until like I actually started doing a little bit of research for this episode that I even was aware of the demos. But you've known about these things for a while.
Yeah, I was also consumed in the world of file sharing and stuff back in the day, SoulSeek and programs like that. And there was this one guy who he had maybe it was your friend.
Or maybe it could have been.
This guy had everything. So I stumbled across the Lurker of Chalice demos, which are very different than the album. Although there are, I think, a lot of the skeletons on those demos, which became the album. They're much more, they have that goth feel to them. It's less black metal feel to the demos.
Yeah, because there's like some sequence drums. There's like a lot of noise and, but then there's this like almost Death in June-esque like vocal patterns that are going on behind everything.
Right. Unfortunately, those demos have yet to see the light of day in a proper release, even a proper digital release. They're kind of just out there on YouTube.
Yeah, that's the only place. I did a pretty extensive search to try to find them, out there, amongst, the viscera of the internet, trying to find someone who had them, on a blog somewhere. But that you don't see much of that these days for some reason.
No, I think that's kind of gone by the wayside. But I did read, I believe it's on the Lurker of Chalice official Bandcamp page. They reissued the album 2018 on Nuclear War Now Productions. And part of that, the funds from the sales from that are supposed to be going to fund a proper release for the demos.
That's awesome.
Yes, so maybe those will be available in a physical form this year sometime.
Yeah, that would be great to get the whole picture of the band, because I feel like if the only thing you heard was a Lurker of Chalice LP, which is an incredible record, you need to have the complement of those demos, I think, to understand kind of the whole process of the band, at least in my opinion,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, those are kind of vital to the overall vibe of Lurker of Chalice.
The coolest thing about those demos is that the first one didn't even have just no titles for the songs,
right?
No record identifier, except there's like 3 runes like sketched on the CD itself. And then the second demo, it just has the Lurker of Chalice logo on it, and once again, like no song titles or anything like that.
Did you ever come across any info on like how many of those, if any, were produced in physical form? Like, I wonder if you go on Discogs.
I don't know. I didn't. I mean, I imagine some very small run of those was made.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be great if like they were remastered and put out on vinyl or at least, some kind of high res like digital download. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because who knows too the quality, the stuff you used to pull off these sites, SoulSeek and stuff. Like a lot of times the quality was pretty shaky.
So for me, in my opinion, and I think we both agree on this, like the two, if you're looking at Wrest's creative output, I think that the Lurker of Chalice and the Leviathan record, Massive Conspiracy Against All Life, are the two kind of like, at least for me, the go-to records if you want to experience what that dude has done. I mean, he has like such an incredible output of music, starting in, was it 1998 until present. The guy's put out like a huge volume of high quality material.
Oh yeah, man, it's kind of endless. But I agree with you. I think that's maybe the high water mark. Although there's so much great Leviathan stuff. If I had to pick one go-to, it would be A Massive Conspiracy.
Yeah, it's like definitely the best sounding of all records, and I just think that's definitely the high point of his creative output as Leviathan. That in the last few records have been great too, but those two are very, that Lurker and Massive are, the epitome. I think if you were to like just have two records by Wrest, those are the two I would go for.
I could almost see those two things could have been merged together to make a double album.
Well, actually, ironically, the word is that Massive Conspiracy was supposed to be a Lurker of Chalice record, and that in some pressings of the CD, that the actual information that comes up is Lurker of Chalice info.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's ironic that these two, that they're actually, there was a connection between the two.
Just to backpedal for a second here, I just pulled up the Lurker of Chalice Bandcamp, and two interesting things actually. So you can buy the digital version of the Lurker of Chalice album from the Bandcamp, which includes a bonus track called Whale that's 8 minutes and 25 seconds long and is slotted as track 7, not tagged on as a bonus track.
Huh.
Which is strange to me.
Yeah.
Because that's the Lurker of Chalice album is a record you listen to as an album.
Uh-huh.
To throw the bonus track in the middle makes me wonder, was that supposed to be there originally? And the other thing is, like I said earlier, there's a note on the bottom that says, all proceeds from this going to repress Lurker of Chalice vinyl, cassette, CD, plus demos and unheard demos.
Great. Yeah. That's exactly the kind of news I want to hear.
Yes. Same here. Yeah.
Now, prior to his entry into black metal, Jef Whitehead was in a band called Gift Horse, where he played drums.
Yeah.
And in various interviews, Whitehead has mentioned that drums is his primary instrument. And everything else he kind of learned on the way, sort of on the job, became a guitarist and a bass player and a vocalist. And keyboard player.
Yeah, everything.
Everything, yeah.
From what I understand, Gift Horse was vastly different. Not a black metal band.
No.
More like a mathy kind of rock band.
Yeah.
Cause he has, if you read interviews with him or whatever, not that there's many out there. There's a great interview from Guitar World, actually, from 2015. It's pretty in-depth, but he mentions all of his influences, guitar players, drummers, and different kind of music, and it's everything from, they get it from black metal stuff to death metal stuff to old touch and go stuff and Jesus Lizard and Polvo and all kinds of stuff.
Well, that's one of the things that you can hear. One of the things that sets him apart, I think, is that Leviathan / Lurker of Chalice is sort of an amalgamation of all these different influences. And
right.
It, comes together to be expressed, like sort of focused through this lens that he has, which adds this like dark nihilistic version of all these things, focused into this like laser beam precision of light, dark light that ends up being a Lurker of Chalice or a Leviathan record.
Yes.
Everything's just kind of reduced and condensed into this like very, very intense dark vision that he has.
Right.
But you can still hear like, I can listen to these records and hear like Jesus Lizard. I can hear Bauhaus. I can hear, Dark Throne.
Sure.
And
yeah.
And I think in that same interview, he mentions that Thorns is the Norwegian band Thorns is a big influence on his guitar style.
Yes, exactly.
So you can hear all that stuff in there.
Yeah, and you can. I mean, if we like a lot of different kinds of music and a lot of the same bands we're talking about, you can really hear that in his music. It's not strictly just like, even though it's black metal, at the root, you can hear all these other influences. They really shine through.
So going back to the Lurker of Chalice record, the track listing is I, Piercing Where They Might, Spectre as Valkyrie Is, Minions, Paramesia, This Blood Falls as Mortal, Part 3, Granite, Vortex Chalice, and Fastened to the 5 Points. Now, there's a documentary that came out, like a three-part documentary that Vice Noisey put out, and Jef Whitehead is featured as one of the subjects of this documentary on one-man black metal projects. And you were saying it was part 3?
Part 3, they cover the Lurker of Chalice stuff more so, yeah.
And in that they revisit one of his old apartments, and that's where apparently, in his own words, he mentions that this is where he tried to take his life, and also where he lived when he was putting together all the Lurker of Chalice material.
Right.
So, maybe for unknown reasons that are undocumented, this Lurker of Chalice material only exists between a certain period of time, because that was the period of time that he was going through these like very dark sort of experiences.
Right.
And I think that Lurker of Chalice captures any kind of feel or vibe that would be sort of documented by that. It documents this sort of period of his life. That's at least my understanding of it. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's the feeling I get, is that this record is like a document of a period of 4 or 5 years that were,
Yeah. I mean, he says in the documentary that Lurker Chalice is over. It will never, record new material again. Basically because of that. It was a thing of its time, of its place. Situations that he was dealing with kind of lent to making that music. So, anyone who hasn't seen that One Man Metal 3-part documentary, it's on YouTube, and it's definitely cool.
Yeah, it has Zaster is covered in that. Another great American one-man black metal band.
And Streborg is the other band from Tasmania, I believe.
Yeah, someplace down under.
Down under, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also that documentary sort of paints a picture of the type of person that exists in this like solitary world of like creating a band that only has one member in it.
Right.
I think that it's a different type of person that makes this kind of music, really.
Yeah. It's really outsider music at its purest form,
Another thing that really resonated with me about that documentary is like the use of corpse paint and transformation and becoming like a different entity. Like when, what I mean? Like why, there's one of the things that strikes me is that even though it's like a one-man band, so why is the need to have like a different name when you're performing this type of music? Because they all have different names.
Yeah, so this is true. I think, and I'm going blank on the guy, his real name and his persona in Streborg, but he kind of explains it the best, that like when he puts on the corpse paint, it just kind of transforms him from being the person he is to this other entity. He does a good job of explaining it. I guess the best you can explain it. Him in particular, he's like a family. Yeah, he's like married and has like kids and stuff. But when he puts on the corpse paint and like goes out in the woods, he just says it transforms him into something else completely. Which, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, that's a common theme that comes across in like a lot of different aspects of human culture. I mean, one of the most obvious things is like the executioner, the guy who used to cut people's heads off. Like they put a hood on,
right?
So they can become a different person to execute people. You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah. And different warrior cultures wear masks, and so they can go out there and murder and kill and do all these like unspeakable acts.
As if it's not them doing it.
As if it's not them doing it, you know what I mean? And I think that there's some connection between that sort of, that concept and the concept of becoming a different person when you put on corpse paint, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you're enabling yourself to do different things, to express yourself in a way that's separate from who you might actually be in regular life, you know what I mean?
An interesting part about, I know people have a lot of opinions on corpse paint. Some people think it's goofy. Some people think, but the interesting thing with a one-man band, a solo artist doing it is they're not performing. These people don't perform for the most part in front of people. So they're just putting on the corpse paint for themselves.
Yeah.
There's no showmanship to it outside of maybe taking some photographs for an album or something. They're not going out and performing in corpse paint in front of people. So you take that whole aspect away from it, it just becomes a whole different thing in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to have a study on all this stuff, like a real scholarly, like analysis of everything, because I think that there's a lot that has to do with like human nature associated with wearing masks. Because in essence, that's what you're doing. You're donning a mask.
Absolutely.
To do something different that might exist outside of like your normal behaviors. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and I think these guys obviously probably were influenced with the makeup in a way, like King Diamond or even Kiss.
Yeah.
But it's just in a different context. I mean, those King Diamond and Kiss play concerts in front of people, and it's part of like stage attire almost. You know what I mean? This is not that. It's something completely different.
Yeah, and the fact that these bands don't perform live too is like, definitely like an important facet, aspect to it. So Whitehead, in addition to putting out a slew of Leviathan records, has also done tons of different splits and collaborations. Like, for example, he's collaborated with Sun. He's part of the black metal quote unquote supergroup Twilight.
Yep.
Have you gotten into them at all?
I have the first two records. I never got the third one. Is he on the third one?
Unknown. That's a good point. I don't know if he's
third
on
one. I know
not.
Thurston Moore.
Yeah, that's a good. It's a good record though. It's more like a Swan sounding kind of like caustic, like industrial kind of thing.
I love the first one.
Yeah, the first one's great.
The second one I remember liking, but I didn't go back to it as much. The first one I liked a lot. First one was very raw sounding. Yeah, he's done other collaborations too, right?
Yeah, there's like a ton of just splits and all these other things that he's involved with. But we talk about Massive Conspiracy. That is the first Leviathan record where he has acoustic drums on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to me, like the way he was able to record and perform all this music, just release after release after release by himself for so long, just on a 4-track.
Yeah, I know.
Because up until Massive Conspiracy, that was the first one with, analog drums, but that was also the first record that was recorded like a recording program. Everything prior to that, he said, was done on a 4-track. Probably like an old school Tascam,
Yeah, there's like so many layers to the music too. So if you think, I don't know, now, these days 4 tracks are like anachronisms, because nowadays everyone you buy a Macintosh, Macintosh laptop and you have GarageBand on there and you have like, as many tracks as you need to layer things down. But when you work with a 4-track, it's like you have to constantly bounce tracks down to free up space on a cassette tape. You know what I mean? Which is like the lowest fidelity quality like medium you could probably work with.
Because we're ancient.
Yeah.
We have both done that with 4 tracks.
Yeah. And to know like very, very poor results in my case.
Right. But yeah, it is incredible. Because although, yes, the quality overall is pretty poor, it's part of what I think maybe he was going for.
Yeah, I mean, there's the idea that like black metal is not about like high fidelity recordings. It's about just like raw expressions of emotion. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. Did you see the Lords of Chaos film?
The film, though, I have not.
Yeah. Well, it's not a crucial viewing.
Yeah.
But did there was the documentary Until the Light Takes Us.
That I've seen.
Yeah. Where Burzum, mastermind Varg,
Yes,
is talking about recording the first Burzum record, and he's like, "Yeah, we took about 10 minutes to set up the drums, and he's like, the engineer asked him, he's like, "Do you want to, adjust the sounds?" And he's like, "No,
no,
I want the worst possible sound." And there you go. So that's like the black metal way, the cult way.
Right.
And I mean, I think that, once again, it'd be great to talk to this guy, but I just think that there's like a certain utility to the Leviathan recordings, that they were done by, completely independent.
Right.
And remember, Burzum went into the studio to record. Jef Whitehead did this all in his apartment.
True.
With a 4-track, with all like on his own steam, he made these recordings, and he found different labels to work with and whatever.
Right.
But the the will of the artist is what actually actualized this material. There was no one pushing him to make any of this music. It was just on his own total strength of will that he recorded all this stuff, and it was done DIY, like in the most purest of senses.
Right.
And it was done with a 4-track. And like 1998, yeah, that's like, you didn't have all the Macintosh programs and, GarageBand and all this other stuff available to you. Yeah, there was digital audio workstations, like you can get Pro Tools, but that was at that point, Pro Tools was kind of like prohibitively expensive in 1998.
Right.
And you needed to have like, these like sound cards and all this other bullshit. So, the 4-track was like the perfect medium. And I just think out of utility that was why he ended up doing this stuff. And when there was enough resources to record an actual to tape, analog with real drums, I think he took that opportunity. And I think that Massive Conspiracy sounds like a fucking totally professionally recorded record.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a huge step up production wise.
Yeah. So let's just run down the track listing on Massive Conspiracy Against All Life. We have Vesture Dipped in the Blood of Mourning, Merging with Sword Onto Them, Made as the Stale Wine of Wrath, 696, which is actually my favorite track on the record.
Great track.
Receive the World,
which is my favorite track.
Vulgar Asceticism, Noisome Ash Crown, which is also one of my, I think, a great track too. And apparently there was like some sort of like controversy about getting this record out. And at one point, it was going to be put out on Blake Judd's record, Battle Command, but it ended up coming out on Moribund, which was the record label that he was signed to at the time.
Right.
And that came out on March 24th, 2008 in Europe, and March 25th, 2008 in North America. And yeah, I remember when this record came out, I bought it as soon as it came out because I had that, that introduction to the band by Dave Whitty for a few years prior to this.
Right. That was the first Leviathan release I bought when it came out. Everything else I'd kind of pieced together, stuff that was out before that. I think the first thing I ever got was the split with Disaster.
That's a cool record.
Yeah.
Both sides of that are pretty cool. That was like probably the first proper release that I purchased However, file sharing wise, I was able to download pretty much the entire collection of his other material.
Me too. That's how I got it all too.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck finding that.
Nah, it's impossible to find these days. But what happened though, I downloaded all these MP3s, but then a funny thing happened. I was employed by a company that was based in Somerset, New Jersey. Okay. And Somerset, New Jersey is fairly close to a record store called Vintage Vinyl, which is known for its extensive extreme metal collection. You can go there and buy, they have an incredible heavy metal section. So every Friday when I got paid, I'd take my lunch break and I'd drive out there and I'd buy records. And they had all these Leviathan records there. So I was able to get the 10th sub-level of Suicide, Tentacles of Horror, and the record A Silhouette of Splinters. Are you familiar with that one?
I am, yeah.
Which is primarily an instrumental.
Yep.
And so those are the proper releases I have by Leviathan. They're actual CDs that were, professionally, mass produced for the market. But all the splits, are just that stuff's it's hard to find. The Crebain split, the split, with Ad Hominem, any of that kind of stuff. The Black Death split, there's a split with Krieg. It's just those things are, out there somewhere.
I think a lot of those splits and stuff were compiled on a collection called Verator.
Yeah.
It's a
double. The 2 CDs. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of stuff from the splits.
Yeah.
Right?
But to find the actual releases, though, is pretty difficult these days.
Yeah. So much of that stuff is awesome, though. God, man. So good.
And then there's 20 demos
right.
or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I went on a tear, man, on file sharing when I first got into Leviathan, and I probably have so much stuff on my hard drive, demos, splits. There's also, I have different versions of some of the records that have different tracks, or some of the tracks aren't on the records. That might just be people uploading stuff wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe there's different versions of these with extra songs or not as many songs. I have no idea.
But one of the things that's most impressive about Leviathan is that for a guy who doesn't perform live, doesn't tour, and just releases records, and the fact that there's so much material out available, and it's all very incredible high quality, that it's really just a commitment. And I think this is connected to what he does for a living. It's just a commitment to art,
right?
To putting out expressive artwork,
right.
Because his Whitehead's day job is that he's a tattoo artist and a visual artist,
right?
And I think that the same to be a painter or any kind of visual artist, it's like a solitary pursuit. You do that by yourself. And I think that same mentality is what crossed over into him making, Leviathan or Lurker of Chalice records. It's just a solitary pursuit to express yourself, and there's very little thought of an audience or very little thought of, commerce or any of those things.
Right.
And that's something that is almost exclusive to these solo artists, these lone solitary practitioners out there.
Right.
Because when you get in a band and you're on a label, and you're going out on tour, you're thinking about selling merchandise and how many people were at the show and all this other bullshit. It's it could be distracting from the actual art because you keep thinking about selling things.
Sure.
And I don't know. I mean, once again, it would be very convenient if we had Jef here to talk to, but that I don't know if that is any kind of motivator for him, for a guy who works by himself.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, really. I mean, he doesn't do a lot of interviews.
No.
I mean, there's almost no footage of him.
I mean, the Guitar World piece that you have that we talked about was probably one of the more in-depth things I've seen. And then also the Noisey thing.
Right.
You know, and then Revolver has a piece that might be released at some point that John Baisley interviews him. And that hasn't come out yet.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, but that's like a 2-part thing. And they talk about artwork and, you know, all this stuff.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And, but yeah, he's a man of few words. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he just stays behind the mask for the most part.
And, you know, when you don't go out, and you know this all too well, when you don't go out and tour, when you don't do all the, get involved in the trappings of being in a band, there's also not a lot of money to be made.
Yeah. By record sales and a day where you and I both just admitted to have illegally downloaded almost the guy's entire catalog, you know?
Right. But even if like, Leviathan, I mean, this say the Lurker of Chalice demos comes out on an LP. It costs a fortune to press vinyl, and make all this artwork and stuff. Even if he sells out of them, he's probably breaking even.
I mean, I'm definitely going to buy that if it comes out.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean, and I for sure, because I want to hold the tactile piece. You know what I mean? It's like
it's the missing piece to the Lurker of Chalice puzzle.
Yeah, you know, and you know, there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of mystique around Leviathan, Lurker of Chalice, and it's like I think that's why like being able to have these artifacts in your hands is important. You know, if you care about the band and the music and all that.
Right. Absolutely.
So everyone go out there and to the Bandcamp page, buy a copy, and hopefully someday we'll be able to hold the demos and the whole package in our hands. You know,
I am going to buy the digital version. This will probably be like the 5th time I've bought the Lurker of Chalice record, but since I just noticed this bonus track that's 8 minutes long that I don't think I've ever heard,
I might do the same thing.
I'll buy it again.
Yeah. I think I'm going to do the same exact thing. Because you know what? Oddly enough, the Lurker stuff is not on. I know it's not on Apple Music.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
So,
I had to pull it off my hard drive to get it on my iPhone.
Yeah, I have the CD, you know, and I had, you know, that's how I listened to it. I have the actual, you know, rip of the CD that I bought. And but yeah, I'll buy it again. Why not?
Right.
If I know that my $9 or whatever is going to go towards a release of the entire body of work, then I think that $9 that I just spent, or $10 or whatever it is, $7.99 or whatever, is money well spent. Because someday I hope to have the entire collection of the story of Lurker of Chalice in my hands.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that, you know, this episode is more of, you know, technically I guess it's a classic records episode, but I guess it's more of a celebration of like the work of Jef Whitehead and his various incarnations, be it Leviathan or the Lurker of Chalice record or any of that kind of stuff. You know, I think it's just kind of like a, you know, show of respect for an artist that I think has touched me, like, and influenced me in my own creative output, and is you know, provided a lot of guidance as far as like creative freedom, you know?
Yeah. Same here, man. Same here. You know, another thing too, if you go to holymountain.com, they have a great selection of Lurker of Chalice and Leviathan merch, which hopefully if you buy enough of that, maybe Jef gets a taste of that.
Well, I can tell you firsthand that since the musical outfit that I'm involved with, Tombs, Holy Mountain is our official merchandiser, and they handle our online web sales for merchandise, so that you do get a generous share of the profits.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, they're a very, very reputable organization. So if you are a fan of Leviathan and Lurker of Chalice, head over to holymountainprinting.com,
right,
and pick up 1, 2, 3, you know, four pieces. You get a hoodie, long sleeve, and like a regular T-shirt, and maybe a sticker or something like that.
And they do have a great. So it's pretty much the only place, I think, maybe Devout Records, which is Jeff's label.
Yeah,
they sell some hoodies and shirts occasionally, but Holy Mountain has like a plethora.
Yeah.
of Leviathan and Lurker merch.
Well, one of the things we failed to mention is that Jef was a professional skateboarder.
Yeah.
Prior to all this stuff.
Yes.
You know? So, I don't know. That was an interesting aside that he has like an athletic background. That's it for this week's episode of Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio weekly podcast. Tune in next week and see what we have in store for you. The show is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Also, be sure to check out Gimme Radio, streaming on the web, iOS, or Android, for one of the best metal communities, exclusive merch, interviews with artists, and so much more. I'll catch you guys next week. Take care.